So I'm going to be speaking on the core issue that has brought us here. And then after that, probably we will then go for lunch and enjoy ourselves. And so the question that I want to ask is, what is a worldview? Why does it matter? And what is Africa's worldview? If we don't have any in our countries, how do we construct those worldviews and govern our countries on that basis in a very practical manner? Now, you see, everybody, each one of us, from the stories we have all told here, from the lessons we learned from our parents, from the origins, our communities, we all have things that have shaped the way we see the world. Things that have shaped who we believe we are. Stories that have shaped where we think we are going and how we will get there. So each one of us has a worldview. Often when we talk about worldviews, we think it's about foreign affairs. We're talking about the world, foreign countries. No. Worldviews are about the inside of us and how we project outside to our immediate environment first and foremost. They are about 7 building blocks, which I will mention right away. 1 is a model of the world. Why is the world the way it is? Why is the world the way it is? Understanding the world. A model of the world. The second building block, the second worldview, the second element of a worldview is the explanation. Who are we? Where have we come from? The third element of a worldview is about the future. Going from our past and into the future. Where are we going? How do we think we want to get there? What's the plan? The fourth element of a worldview is value systems. Every worldview each and every one of us has is anchored around a value system. And all our stories and all our proverbs and all our rules, as we have all shared here, demonstrate that. The fifth element is the theory of action. The theory of action. That is, what do we do to, influence our environment based on who we are, where we have come from, and where we're going. That's the theory of action. The sixth is the theory of knowledge. That is called knowledge systems. How do we perceive? How do we know what is right and what is wrong? How do we interpret knowledge? Knowledge systems. Let me give you a practical example of knowledge systems at work. We all go to hospitals. Most of the hospitals that everybody here goes to are classic Western medicine hospitals. Am I wrong? I don't know if anyone here has ever gone to an acupuncture clinic. That's Chinese medicine. Have you gone to an Indian Ayurveda clinic? That is Indian medicine. Have you gone to an African traditional medicine man? These are 4 different knowledge systems at work. They're all trying to do the same thing, but the system of knowledge is different in each case. So these are knowledge systems that form foundations of worldviews. The final building block, or the final element of a worldview, is what we call the building blocks of our worldview. 7 components. The building blocks exist because worldviews don't drop from the sky. They are based on things that we know. They're based on realities that we have encountered, and we begin to encounter from birth. So, this is what a worldview means. Now, what matters for the context of our conversation about Africa and Africa's development is not so much our individual worldviews. They matter because individuals make up the community and the group. But what matters even more is whether our countries have national worldviews, or what is called system worldviews. This is what determines whether a country will own and shape its own destiny in the world, or whether the country will just be, existing. National worldviews. Many African countries today do not have a cohesive, evident national worldview. And I submit to you, or I put it to you, as the lawyers would say, Mohamed Othman Chande is here, former Chief Justice of Tanzania. I put it to you that greatness of any nation, whether African, Asian, European, doesn't matter. No nation, no civilization can rise, be great, and create prosperity for itself without a clear worldview that has been inculcated in the citizens and forms the basis on which that country is governed. Straight away. That's why worldviews matter. They are not a philosophical abstraction, although it's a philosophical concept, but it has very practical consequences. So, let me demonstrate with another example. We all admire China today. We all admire the West. These are powers. These are civilizations that are powerful in the world. But what is the basis of their power? What is the basis of their strength? What is the basis of their prosperity? Philosophical foundations, worldviews. Africans have a challenge, and that is that we are not, in the current dispensation, thinking deeply enough. Worldviews matter because development begins in the mind. It doesn't begin anywhere else. It begins in the mind. As we think, so we do. I listened to one pastor the other day saying, what goes inside the mind comes out in a life. And so we neglect this aspect, and we're all running around in our country saying we're chasing development. And for 60 years, we still have not transformed our country. That's more than it took several Asian countries to become some of the world's greatest economic powers today. What is our excuse? We need to have a hard talk with ourselves. And that's what this is all about. So, in the West was built, constructed on a specific worldview that evolved over time. That worldview is based on three things. In the West, what governs is individualism, individual rights, human rights. The next thing on which the Western worldview is constructed is institutions, because the Western political thinking evolved in a manner that wanted to avoid tyranny or to put tyranny behind them. And so they had to have institutions that would check the absolute power of any head of government or any king. Moving away from kingships and royalty, moving into more republican forms of government, they had to create institutions. The third element is rational scientific inquiry. This is the Western worldview. These three things have led to the rise of the West and their greatness. Everything in the Western mind, and this is coming from a time when the ecclesiastical order was the ruling worldview, but the Industrial Revolution changed all that. Relegated the clergy to their own space. People discovered that the earth was round, not flat. Galileo and his telescope changed everything. So, rational scientific inquiry. That is why technology and its rise is the basis of the superiority of the Western world in the world today. They invent, they copyright, they patent, and they manufacture the things that the world uses. From there comes economic wealth. What is the philosophy? What is the worldview of the East? The worldview of China and the Asian countries is based on three things. One is that the Chinese and the Eastern countries, they believe in one thing. They believe that time is endless. They believe in the connectivity of all things. This is why the Chinese man or woman thinks in 50 to 100 year time spans. We all have dealt with the Chinese. But in many African countries, we think mostly about today and tomorrow morning. So, this is one element. And all of this in the East comes from the Confucian principles. The principles laid down by Confucius, their major dominant religious philosopher. The endlessness of time. The second element of the Asian worldview is based on the community and the society. The third is based on stability and order. Stability and order are an end in themselves. Because of this, the community and the society matters far more than the individual. This is a completely opposite worldview from the Western worldview. The Western worldview begins from individual rights. The Eastern worldview begins from individual obligations, because you are part of something larger than yourself. We can see immediately that there is a certain familiarity that the Eastern worldview has for us as Africans, because all of us here talk about our community. Now, so these are the reasons why these two civilizations are rising and they are fighting. Worldviews are translated into what is called global strategic intent. The intent and the will to rise. The intent and the will to prosper. The intent and the will to dominate. That is why some people in the world are drivers today. Some are passengers. Some are bus conductors. We have to define, where are we as Africans? We don't just exist to survive. We should exist to thrive. There are a number of areas in which worldviews manifest themselves in the African reality today. But before I go into that, I want to say three things that are the basis on which a worldview is constructed. Number one, leadership. Leadership. You can't leave home without it. Number two, education systems. Number three, propaganda. These are the three foundations upon which worldviews are developed, disseminated, and take hold. Propaganda. When we hear the word propaganda, we often think lies, negative stuff. But that's not necessarily true. Propaganda is simply, it comes from a Latin phrase, Congregatio de Propaganda Fide, the congregation for the propagation of the faith, which was instituted, or which was part of the Roman Catholic Curia under the reign of Pope Leo XV, Pope Gregory, in 1622. That's where the word propaganda comes from. Congregatio de Propaganda Fide, the congregation for the propagation of the faith. Because propaganda means to propagate in order to persuade. That's what it means. Leadership drives worldviews, because in no society, if you look at America and their manifest destiny worldview, it was laid by the founding fathers of the United States. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all those, Alexander Hamilton, we know them from history. These are great men. And they had a philosophical foundation upon which they built the United States Constitution after they had fought a war of independence from Britain and succeeded. So, that's why every American you see reflects certain traits. They are very confident. They feel special. These things have not come about by accident. They have been propagandized to feel that way. No, but it's true. They have been educated to believe the specialness of their country. And it starts from primary school. Watch an American and his or her reaction to the flag. Watch an American and his or her reaction to the Stars and the Stripes, the national anthem. Some weep, some cry. And this is a country of disparate ethnicities, all brought together, most of them as immigrants. Let's forget about what's happening now for a moment. But the way the society was constructed on a philosophical foundation that rose above every other thing that divided them. Race, ethnicity, all those things. But when they remember the idea of America, land of the free, home of the brave, they stand still. We are Americans. Even the blacks who for many years had no rights, they're still proud. But they fought within their system to obtain their rights. But it doesn't make them, ask them whether they'd rather be somewhere else or in America. They will tell you we'd rather be in America, thank you. This is the power of worldviews. So this is how worldviews are constructed. In this country, just to use it as a brief example, this is one of the very few African countries with a very clear worldview, Rwanda. And that came about as a result of tragedy. The genocide forced a reset, and the people who ended it had a vision to build a certain type of country, learning from the lessons of the past. And so there's a very clear worldview at play about being Rwandan and what it means. I see them. I'm always mingling with them. At events, when the Rwandan dance begins, you see the nostalgia. So people have been inculcated with a certain thing. So leadership matters because the person who is in charge has shown the way. The country was existing before he came. They were nothing great or talked about. It was just one village somewhere in Central Africa, sorry. But now, it's a country to reckon with. People want to come here as a destination for tourism, as a destination for conferences. There is a plan. That's the product of a worldview that is clear. Education. The education system is what trains people. And so what we teach our children matters greatly. We should teach them not only math and science and English or French. We have to teach them worldviews. We have to teach them values. That's how children become men and women who believe in a certain thing and they act on the basis of that belief. When we neglect our education system in most African countries and do not focus on doing this, we cannot build patriotism. We cannot build the patriotism that we see in the Chinese. We cannot build the patriotism we see in the Americans. And then third, I talked about propaganda, the use of the media. It happened in America. So those are the three foundations. Now let me discuss briefly the implications of the absence of national worldviews for Africa. Practical implications. The first implication it has for us, with very few exceptions, I'm talking about majority in Africa. I've just given an example of an exception. There are one or two others. Botswana is another one. We listened to Professor Robinson talk about it. And he talked about a particular aspect that I'll speak to right now. The first implication about the absence of worldviews is reflected in how we govern ourselves. How we govern ourselves. The first, in that how we govern ourselves, there's number one, there's number two. Number one is that we have not used homegrown systems to govern ourselves. Worldviews are based on who we are, the reality in which we were born and raised. But in Africa today, we want to become developed countries on the basis of other people's worldviews, but not our own. We have not looked into what makes us uniquely African. What are those values? In Botswana, Professor Robinson talked about is it the kola or something? What? The hotline, yes. That assembly, that is a traditional thing. The people can relate to it. You're governing your people based on what they can relate to. We talked about Imihigo, the contract performance management system in Rwandan culture. We talk about Umuganda, organizing people to be able to work together in a community. Where I come from, we have Igwebike and all those kinds of things as well. In the southwest Yoruba, we have Omoluabi, the significance of good behavior and being well brought up. Somebody will say to you, I am an Omoluabi. That one is not. So, these are things that are absent in African systems of governance. And it goes all the way to the systems of governance we inherit and we use. Today, or for the past 30 years, everybody and his uncle, every man and his uncle, every woman and her aunt, they are so-called practicing democracy. Democracy. Now, how were African traditional societies governed? In different societies, they differ. But anybody that tells you that Western liberal democracy is the solution to Africa's problems, you need to question that, because after 30 to 40 years, what has it delivered? You have to ask yourself questions. And I'm not, promoting dictatorship. No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm just asking questions. What is the promise, and has it been realized? These are systems that developed from other cultures. We have ways in which we govern ourselves. So what is happening in Africa is that we have two societies. We have the traditional society, and we have the constitutional society that is constructed on the basis of Western models of governance, parliamentary, presidential, whatever. Those two societies do not meet. In many countries, in most African countries, those two societies are parallel. They need to meet. Because most people are under the traditional system more than the people who are other than the modern system. Traditional rulers have no roles in most African countries, and yet most African citizens respect them more than elected authorities. This is an aspect of the worldview question. The second aspect of how we govern relates to our ability to how we use time and measure productivity in terms of time. This has implications for economic productivity. In Africa, we tend to dwell in time. We enjoy time. We luxuriate in time. But other than the professional working class that can measure productivity in terms of time, most Africans simply measure time morning, afternoon, night. Very simple. There is no measurement of productivity based on the hours. That's why in the West, you are paid an hourly wage. Time is measured, productivity is measured. And in Africa, we do not measure, we don't have the organizing principle. How do you actually make sure that our plans, our policies are actually implemented? How do we measure the performance of what we're trying to do? The execution premium, we call it in strategy. So this is one area about how we govern ourselves in which the absence of worldviews affects African countries. The second area, which is very important, is in how we relate to the world. The absence of a worldview leads many Africans and many African countries to believe things like we are part of a quote-unquote international community.